Hello there, folks. My name is Andrew Griffiths. I'm the international best-selling author, 14 business books sold in 65 countries around the world, and I have the great pleasure of being interviewed and really have an engaging conversation with Prosper on the online prosperity show. And look, we dive deep. We talk about everything from diving to croissants to $85,000 walking sticks and everything in between. But it's really an exploration in a very kind way from Prosper about my 25-year history as an entrepreneurial writer, and hopefully sharing some really practical advice for people about ways that they can actually charge what they're worth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we unravel the secrets of success and entrepreneurship with the brightest minds in the business world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we are going to be diving deep into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship with none other than the legendary Andrew Griffiths. Now, Andrew, how are you doing, my man?
Hello, Prosper. My first interview with a man called Prosper, and one that's long overdue. We should have done this interview many years ago, I think. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. You know what they say, Andrew? Greatness comes to those that can wait 5 business days. We had to wait for this moment to happen. So that's the reason why it's now happening today. And for those that are wondering what the banter is all about, me and Andrew have known each other for quite a while. Me the longest, because I've been stalking him and learning a great deal from him. And it's about time that we have this chat, and then he gets to know why his ears have always been ringing. Now, for those that don't know who Andrew is, I'm just gonna take you out of your misery and take you out of that rock you've been hiding under, because Andrew is not your average entrepreneur. With 14 best-selling books under his belt, and he just informed me that he's writing number 15, 16, and 17. He has a knack for futuristic insights, and he's not just ahead of the curve, he's practically setting the standard of how to be, do, and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable. But let's not let these serious credentials fool you. Andrew is just like any of us on a journey to be, do, and have a business that he is also proud of. And his journey stems from orphanhood to entrepreneurial stardom, and it's all awe-inspiring as much as it's enlightening. Now, I want you to get ready on a roller coaster ride of wisdom, wit, and wild adventures, both on land and under the sea, as we uncover the man behind the legend. Now, Andrew, I could go on and talk about your credentials and everything else that comes along with it. We only have 25 minutes, and I don't think I can fit in all the 25 years of what you've been doing in business. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, really, from orphanhood to being this entrepreneurial icon that everybody can't wait to hear from right now.
Yeah, thank you, Prosper. And it's always hard to live up to that. It's like before you go on stage as a speaker, and they read out your bio, and it's kind of like you're looking around the room to see who they're talking about, and of course it's you. For me, as you said, in the intro there, I grew up as an orphan. I don't have a birth certificate. And so my parents had left myself and my sister when I was about 6 months old in Melbourne, of all places. And so I had one of those kind of fairly unusual childhoods. In and out of care. I was brought up by an old lady for about 10 years, and there was a lot of violence, and there was a lot of neglect, and a lot of the stuff that kind of comes with that early childhood that sadly is quite predictable. But in the same vein, though, Prosper, people often say to me, how come you don't pull wings off butterflies and hurt puppies? And, you had that upbringing. And it's like, I do believe that it's a choice. But I also realize that it can't all be bad, right? This lady, I learnt a lot of my values. And as strange as it sounds, like, she was a kleptomaniac. She was really violent. She swore like a Melbourne wharfie, but she was born in 1896, this old lady. So think about that for a second. 1896, and she took me and my sister in when she was 70 years of age. So, and she had dementia and all kinds of things. But back in that era, things were a little bit different. This is in the early 70s, and oh, sorry, this was in the mid 60s. So it was a different world. But anyway, I kind of grew up and had that tumultuous life, got into drugs, got into alcohol, got into petty crime, heading down a very predictable path for kids from that don't have structure and don't have those elements. But I was really, really lucky. At the age of 17, I bought a dive shop. And 17, almost 18, that I bought it. And I literally walked into the bank and borrowed some money. Of all the things that have been going on in my life, one thing that I'd learned how to do was to dive. And I'd become a diver, and I loved diving, and it kind of was a nice, healthy sport when I was in a fairly unhealthy lifestyle stage in my life. And I got a part-time job filling cylinders at a dive shop for a crazy Canadian guy. And he wanted out, and I bought the business at a time when you could walk into a bank with nothing and get a check when you walked out with that. It wasn't a lot of money. It was like 25 grand or something at the time, but it was a lot of money to me, as you can imagine. So that's the short version, and that's what started my entrepreneurial journey. But before then, I had no entrepreneurial role models. I had no one that I looked up to. I just kind of fell into it. But it was so transformational for me because it gave me purpose. It gave me responsibility. It gave me a lot of things. It taught me about dealing with people, how to interact, how to engage. And there was a lovely respect that I got from my customers being so young and buying a business that I'd never really had in my life up until that stage. I'd never really felt good about myself. I'd never really felt that I had value or I had any of those things. I had all of that stuff to battle. And a dive shop, strangely enough, defined me and gave me that thing. Now, doing business, Prosper, I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a freaking nightmare. Like who's been to small business university? None of us, so I made all of the mistakes that you make, and that was, it was a terrible thing, but I overcame them and kind of stumbled my way through it. And I realized probably one of my biggest lessons was just because I was a commercial diver didn't mean I knew how to run a business. I knew how to blow bubbles, right? But I didn't know profit and loss. I didn't know how to mark things up. And I had a real poverty mentality that I'd inherited. And the guy I bought the dive shop from had as well. So my view was everything's got to be cheap, and you just got to try and sell lots of it. And here we are, 40 years later, and I realized how flawed that concept is in so many different ways.
And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. Now, Andrew, I don't think it's only you that doesn't have a birth certificate. Even Obama, had to question his own origins.
Yeah, right.
If you would look at it, great men really do seemingly appear into this world, and that's what other people do. So,
well, and in Australia, it's not that unusual too, because a lot of Aboriginal kids don't have birth certificates, so it's one of those things. But I think, again, it's very easy. The biggest learning for me, Prosper, was really, there was a moment in my life, and it was a real crossroad for me. And I was around 16. I'd been living on people's couches, and I really was going down that pathway of, spiraling with alcohol, drugs, crime, things along those kind of lines, because of, the victim. You play victim. You hang with the wrong kind of guys, the wrong people. You get very much caught up in that. And I had an epiphany moment, and I was literally standing at the end of the driveway of the place where I was staying, ready to go out with the guys that night. And I felt, to me, like it was a bolt of lightning that kind of hit me and said, Andrew, you go left or you go right. You choose. Left is sadness, pain, tragedy, jail, probably, all of that kind of stuff. And right is potential. And I was fortunate that I had the strength of character to walk back in the house, grab my stuff, and I left. I was in Sydney at the time, and I just hitchhiked to Townsville and literally got out of there and started a new life. And that was that moment was, and I've had a few of those kind of epiphanal kind of moments, if that's the right way to call them, that I go, they were the, they were the moments. I'm a very big believer in crossroads, going back through your life and mapping your crossroads and going, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a crossroad in my entire world. And again, led me, even like writing my first book, Prosper. It's so many people said to me, it's really hard to write a book. Andrew, you're a nice bloke and all, but you don't have any marketing qualifications. Like, kind of, you run a little marketing company in Cairns. Who are you to write a book? You'd be amazed how many times I had people say that. And I thought, wow, really? But see, my inner mongrel, all that made me do is want to write it more, and I was lucky that I didn't listen to those people. But I did send all of them a copy of the book when it arrived. My first book, 100 Ways to Market Your Business. And most of them came back to me and said, wow, it's so basic, so easy. It's a great book. I could have written it. And I said, yeah, but you didn't. And that was the point there. So a little bit cheeky, but it was like, I learned early on is don't listen to the people who tell you all the things you can't do. And there are a lot of people that take great pleasure in saying, hey, Prosper, you're from Zimbabwe, you can't do this, or you can't do that because you're this or whatever. And I know your whole show is looking beyond, limitations and thinking differently. And that's been, learning to live life to the beat of my own drum has been one of my greatest lessons, I think, along the way.
Fantastic. And I'm still hung up on the part where you decided to choose diving. Do you think that maybe that would have been an escape from everything else that was happening around you and everything else, because you're submerging yourself into a world that obviously is unknown, and you'd rather spend time there, like you said, blowing bubbles and self-discovery mission there?
Quite possibly, yeah. I'd never really thought about it that way, to be honest with you. But it was a great film. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I guess that was my deep down. And I had the vision that if I was a marine biologist, I'd be riding humpback whales across the ocean. That's what I thought marine biologists did. Then I started to realize I did a bit of work experience in high school at a laboratory of marine biologists, the CSIRO in Cronulla. And I realized what they do is spend all day looking at microscopes and drinking cups of tea in the rec room. And it was like, really? I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in a laboratory. And so that's when I rethought my career. But it was very good for me. It taught me a lot. It taught me about responsibility and taught me a lot about life, about nature, about people. I taught a lot of people how to dive. And there was a great joy that I took out of turning people onto diving and seeing the underwater world, and I took it very seriously too, that I had a real moral responsibility to make sure that they were okay. If I was going to teach someone, I got to teach them really well so they don't go off and kill themselves. So a lot came out of blowing bubbles, a lot came out of that for me.
Absolutely. And we're not just going to hold our breath so we can dive deep there. But you went on, I mean, even though people were telling you, nah, I could have written the book myself or whatever, you went on and wrote 14 best-selling books over, the 35 sort of years of entrepreneurial experience. First of all, what is it that inspired you to lead this sort of lifestyle, from being a diver to becoming somebody who actually helps others be, do, and have businesses that are profitable and enjoyable?
Well, a crossroad, like as always. So the crossroad for me was I'd done diving, the dive shop. I'd worked in other areas. I'd worked in exploration in WA, but I've really always taught people stuff, to be honest, Prosper. Like, I taught people how to dive as much as I was also a commercial diver. But I taught people first aid and how to survive in the bush when I was in WA. I am a teacher first and foremost, probably. But I moved to Cairns, and my sister was living in Cairns, and I got a job diving in Cairns, which is pretty easy. And I was putting in pontoons on the Great Barrier Reef. and I got decompression sickness. So, which then stopped me from diving. And so I had to do something else. And the company that I was working for were awesome, big Japanese shipping company. And they said, well, you've got a big mouth, we'll retrain you. And they put me into their sales and marketing department. And I was really, really good at sales and marketing. And I spent 5 years traveling around the world, being their marketing guy and doing trade, teaching people about the Great Barrier Reef. It's easy for me. And then I kind of went, you know what? I think I love small business. I think I want to get back into it. And I started my own marketing company for small business owners. So that was how that whole kind of arc played out. But then I found again that I was teaching people about marketing, a lot more. Like I was trying to help my clients understand marketing, not like a university degree, but just teaching the basics about understanding, all of the things you need to do to grow a business. And I realized I was saying the same things all day, every day. And it just made sense to start putting that information down. And then all of a sudden I had enough info that I thought, you know what, I can put 101 ideas together. Maybe I've got 101 marketing ideas. And I pitched it to a publisher and they said, yeah, great. It's a fantastic book at a time. So this was in the year 2000, 1999. And there weren't really as many Australian business authors. We're getting most of our knowledge in Australia from British authors, the American authors. Great stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it lacked a bit of Australianism. Australians, like most of us, and we needed to have a rise of Australian authors. And so my book got published and it was just really, really successful. And the publisher said, you want to write another one? I went, sure. And, that just played out then for the next 20 years type of thing. So yeah, so that's how that all kind of evolved. I just wrote about what I knew about and what I was seeing, and I wrote from a position of wanting to help others and to serve, to be brutally honest, Prosper. That's always, it's always my home base.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel I concur with that. I mean, I think it was
I know you do. Yeah, I know you do. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was Zig Ziglar that says, help enough people get what they want, then you too will definitely get that which you want, which brings me to one of your pivotal books. I don't know if you still remember, you wrote this one.
I do.
Where you tell people to stop analyzing and start living. Maybe just walk us through, in one breath as a party instructor, what you were trying to convey with this book, because I didn't understand. What do you mean it's not all about me?
Yeah, right. Well, to be honest, I think that one of the challenges that we have, and what I actually say in there, is to put down the self-development books, put down, like just get on with living, and that's really what that message is that we can get so caught up analyzing and thinking and learning and getting better that we actually become addicted to that. And it actually, growth happens when we're doing, not when we're learning. Like learning is so wonderfully valuable, don't get me wrong. And as an author, telling people to put down the books and get on with life, that people saying, don't you want more people to pick up the books? No, I want people to live. And you know what it's like? You see people that are learning and development junkies. They're going to every next course, reading every next book, which is fabulous. But you gotta put them down and you gotta apply. You gotta be doing stuff. You gotta be learning stuff, but you've got to be doing more importantly. And I've just found that in my life, if I look back again, the greatest moments were not thinking about writing a book or learning about writing a book, or and it was actually writing the book. Being a speaker, like I speak globally all over the planet. I didn't learn about speaking from a book. I didn't, I learned technical stuff, but I learned more by going on a stage. When do you learn the most about running a business? The first year you make pretty much every mistake that you possibly can. Then you make them again in the second year, right? And often you repeat them in the third year just to make sure you've really done them well, but we learn these lessons. It's like, for me, the doing thing. If I get burnt by a client, someone goes broke or whatever, and I lose 10 grand, I just put that into the 10 grand bank of university. I've learned a $10,000 lesson that's probably going to save me $1 million. you know, and you know, but you don't learn that by reading about it. You know, you got to do so. So that's really what my message was. Is that we're a little bit we're in over analysis paralysis is really a thing, and sometimes we just dive too deep and spend too long inside, going round and round in circles, doing more. Get out and do. That's where you learn stuff. That's where you make mistakes. That's where you grow as a human being.
Absolutely. I boil it down to fear because a lot of people now have, a vision or a view of what is possible, but then they don't want to be held accountable to actually go out and live that life, which I think you really then call them out in your latest and greatest book, where you call out people and say, you know what, you've learned all these things, you've done all these things, let the compounding start to happen and become the most expensive person. Now, for me, this book really, really took me aback. I think it came at a time where, we'd just come out of the pandemic, and I was just thinking to myself, maybe people really want to, ease back into the swing of things. And then you strike me straight right in between the noggins there and say, you know what, if somebody's got to do it, why not make it yourself? And
Yeah.
I've then later on realized that so many businesses are facing the pandemic of not charging enough, where we're doing all this work and we're not being compensated for it. First of all, thank you so much for penning what is on the mouths of everybody else. I think you became the Eminem of our generation, who says what is on people's mouths, but they don't know how to voice it. What can people expect in this book to start off with?
And thank you again, mate. I appreciate it because it's a really interesting thing. I've been talking about this concept for a long time, and what I've noticed was I had to make the transition myself, right? Because I, spent the first 17 years of my life being told that I had no value. I kind of spent the rest of my life proving that I have. If you have a poverty mentality, if you grow up thinking that the only way I'm going to get business is by price, there's all these things. And over the years, and the work that I do now in particular, I see so many business owners that are working so hard, putting everything on the line, and they're not making any money, and they're really good at what they do. And it generally comes back to they simply don't charge enough for what it is that they do because of all this clutter, stories, no one will pay, the industry's, it's all this, it's all that. And I started to, like, over the last 20 years, I started to see these businesses that completely buck that. They didn't get caught up in, oh, it's so competitive, oh, it's a bad market. All the chatter they ignored, and they just were the most expensive. And there's always someone who's the most expensive. Now, what goes with that, if you're going to be the most expensive, you've got to be the best. And this is the moral to the story. You can't be the most expensive and be the most crap. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? But we live in a world now where people look for value in different ways. And they're also, I feel, Prosper, that there are always people looking for the best, and they're prepared to pay. Every year there's more people, because we've all bought the cheapest. We've all bought the cheapest pen and it failed. We've all bought the cheap. We get that. But now I see so many businesses around the world. It might be someone making camembert cheese for $20 a round, 3 or 4 or 5 times what anyone else is going to charge. But they have an amazing farm. They have amazing animals. They have an amazing story. That's all they do. Make 3,000 rounds a week, and they all pre-sell them, and they are the best at making camembert cheese. And this is a part of this movement, this slowing business down, doing your thing, doing it exceptionally well, and charging accordingly. You can either do that and really enjoy it, have the kind of business that's robust. If you're the most expensive, I tell you what, you ride out pandemics, you ride out global economic downturns, you ride them out because your business is far more resilient. But the majority, the 80%, are all kind of back over here about, well, things are getting tough, I've got to lower my prices. How many businesses haven't put up their prices in the last few years simply because they go, I'm going to lose all my customers. If you putting up your prices means you're going to lose all your customers, you haven't got them anyway. They're not your customers. They're just in the ether, and I'm not saying being stupid. I'm not saying, okay, well, I charge $50 for a pen. Now I'm going to charge 300. That doesn't really work. But what I'm saying is if you adopt this model of being the most expensive, and delivering time and time again and being the best in every part, and being the best covers a lot of territory, you will build the most extraordinary business that will ride through tough times, that will attract great staff, that people will find you, simply because you're the best. I've got a great friend of mine called Peter Lick, who's a photographer, and it's the digital, phone era, right? So, everyone's got we've got a high definition camera. There's, how many billion, 6 billion, high definition, 7 billion high definition cameras. Everyone's going, oh, the value of photographs has dropped dramatically. So Pete is an Australian and he lives in America now. He's got a huge business in America. He's got the record of selling, 3 prints for 10.4 million US dollars a few years back. In the age of digital, where no one is buying, this term no one is doing. And I look at that and go, how does he buck the trend? He's the best. Pete, no one, it works as hard, is as dynamic as Peter Lick as a photographer. And you look at it, he regularly sells images for $1 million US dollars plus. Not once in a blue moon, regularly sells it. And you go, but there's all these photographers and there's all these other people, and surely everyone can take a photo. How does he do it, right? He's got an amazing brand. He's got an amazing eye. He is the hardest working man I've ever met in my life. He is he's crazy. He's obsessed about, getting the right image. He's the guy who'll lower himself into a volcano from a helicopter to get the shot. Like, he gets the shots of landscape photography that people go, but he is. I saw him do a photo shoot once where there was like 100 people, models, all the rest of it. He literally turned up, got out his camera, took one click, packed it up, put it back in the car, and drove off. And this is back in the era of film, right? And everyone's kind of going, "Oh, seriously?" Like, oh god, So he backed himself as well, and that was a big photo shoot for the Queensland government. And he just went, "I got the shot. Don't need anything else." So yeah, and everyone is standing around gobsmacked, going, most photographers are going to go and take 10,000 shots to make it there. And Pete, one photo, that's a shot. See you later. I kind of love and admire that. But Prosper, I'd also say, though, this applies. I'm talking at an extreme end. But if I'm in a room full of small business owners of any sort, and when I'm presenting, I ask 2 questions. I ask who here in the room feels that they actually charge what they're worth. And I'll have 2 people out of 100 will put up their hand. 2%. How many of you want to charge more? How many of you want to charge what you're worth? 100% of people put up their hands. And that is it in a nutshell. That's why I wrote this book.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I think you've given the entrepreneurial community permission to really step into their worth, because so many people just want to be liked, and in the process they are obviously limiting their own financial success and the continuity of their business, because if you don't have money to continue tomorrow, then obviously you're not going to be there to then become the best. All right. And also, we now live in a world where everything has been figured out. You know what I mean? Like, the even the food, we don't have to wake up in the morning and lick whatever leaves and taste whatever berries to see if we can have that for breakfast. You look at my pantry, it really gives me, some traumatic experiences, just thinking, wow, there's so much food in the world. You know what I mean? And that in and of itself, I think people should now understand that being baseline in your business is no longer, the call to entry, because good service, good turnaround, and everything else has already been figured out. We need to go above and beyond. And one thing that I really noted in your book here, because when I received this book, and thank you so much for a signed copy, I'm gonna have to really brag about it. There, one of the things that you mentioned is the world has changed. Have you? Now, if we just look in the last couple of days, I'm not going to talk about the last couple of years or whatever, just the last couple of days, the artificial intelligence, the way photos are now being produced and things of that nature, so much has changed. Yet you told us you walked into a bank and then you were like, yep, I can carry a backpack full of air and yeah, just give me money against that. What have you seen as one of the, maybe two or three changes that are significant that even some people are not paying attention to, that could actually help them become, or start charging a lot more than they
Yeah.
are in their business?
It's a good question, right? Well, if I looked at it, there's a few things that I'd probably say, and I think that for starters, I go back one step. Charging what you're worth, being the most expensive, is not about driving a Maserati. I think sometimes people think that that's what this is all about. For me, what it is really about you building a business that serves you. One that you're not going, weak. Australia has a big problem, with resilience in small business. We saw it during COVID. It's week to week for many small business owners, and it just shouldn't be like that. The business should be far more resilient. Yet the reason it's not is because, people don't charge enough. There's not enough money in there. And we're driven, the only strategy many businesses have is a price strategy and to be cheap. That's not a strategy. It's not even close to having a strategy. So the reason for this is to build more resilient businesses, because once your business is financially resilient, meaning you're charging enough for what you do, everything changes. Everything changes. Who you attract as staff, who you attract as customers, what you can do, what you can afford to do in your business, all of those things change. A rough patch, you've got the fat in the business in reserves to be able to ride it out. You're not, and you're kind of the last one standing a lot of the time, right? So there's all these wonderful reasons for doing that. But to do it, there's a few things. One is, for me, that you've got to really get what this concept of being the best means. Being the best really is tough. You've got to be a bit obsessed about your business and whatever it is you sell, whatever it is, like Peter Lick, the photographer. But, in Melbourne, Loon croissants. You ever bought a Loon croissant? Line up for 45 minutes to buy a croissant and pay $15 for a croissant. How can that work? I can go up the road and buy a croissant for $2. Why? Because there's an obsessed lady running it who used to be a Formula One engineer who's just making extraordinary things. So I think if you can't be the best and you're not prepared to do what it takes, or you've got some limiting belief, you end up playing in the price space. The second thing is, you've got to be prepared to zig when everyone else is zagging. You've got to be, like I talked about, living life to the beat of your own drums before. I've done that all my life, and it's like, you've got to, if everyone's on AI at the moment, you know what I'm promoting and what I'm writing a book about? Old school marketing. Print a brochure. Go back to having, go back to old school marketing in a world that now is all new school. Now, I'm not saying I'm against AI. Of course not. AI is a great tool, rah. It's like digital. Am I saying don't do social media? Of course not. But what I'm saying, there's a pendulum, and it's right over here now, all about tech, AI, etc. There's this big open space over here. When was the last time you got a magnificent brochure sent to you? When was the last time you got some beautiful physical item? When was the last time, that's our opportunity straight away, and you're about to pull one out, right?
Whenever I receive physical things, I actually keep them, and in the interest of showcasing what's happening, they see
that's the back of a card that I sent you, right?
Yes, it's a cutout.
So I look at that. The third thing I think that's so critical now is to understand value. Like we think of value for money, like, is this pen worth $3.50 or whatever it is, right? value is so much more complex than that now. The world's changed. Value is measured in these wonderful different ways about creativity, about credibility, about even what do you like to deal with around experience, expertise. There's all these things like, what people have said to me in the last few years in particular, Andrew, you're amazingly consistent. And I used to translate that to going, well, that must mean I'm boring. It sounds like it's boring. And they go, no. You keep writing books, you keep having your messaging, you never, there's never a scandal about you. There's never, oh, now I'm going to start, selling Himalayan yak milk. You've just been helping business for decades. And that consistency gives me credibility. But I'm also very creative as well. I'm always coming up with new products and ideas. But my underlying core is very consistent, which gives me credibility. So we turn around and start looking at this and going, okay, we've got to be the best. We've got to be really committed to that. We've got to be brave enough to go against the grain when other people everyone's going in that direction. We've got to kind of, know what our value is, and understand that, okay, this is how I bring value. For me, it's like being booked to do a keynote presentation now. The reason that people book me is because they go, Andrew, we booked you to open our conference. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to, you're a safe opening keynote because you're always going to get a great feedback. Not because I'm awesome and a great speaker, but I've been doing it for a long time, right? If I haven't figured out how to do it by now, then I'm probably not that clever. But their value in choosing me is knowing that they don't have to worry. They don't have to go, is he going to say stupid stuff? Is he going to get on stage and swear or be inappropriate? Is he going to... No, because I've done 1,000 presentations in 25 countries. I'm a safe speaker to book for them. Now, if they want someone who's going to talk about AI and the world, I'm not that guy, right? And I know that. The fourth part is know your lane and own your lane. I know what I do. I'm not Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins, but I'm not him. I can't be him. I'm not Zig Ziglar. I had the great fortune of talking to Zig Ziglar. I rang his office once, and his secretary put me through, and we had this wonderful 2-hour conversation with Zig. I'm not, Gary V. Any of those kind of people. Be your own person. The world wants. It's what I love about you, Prosper. Be your own person. The world is moving to a homogenized state where things are same. Everything's AI is a major tool for same. Now more than ever, if you want to be the most expensive, charge what you're worth, you want to live this, you've got to really embrace what makes you, and fight, not fight, but like keep pushing against the wave. That's where great opportunity lay. And I, as you can tell, I'm a little bit passionate about this because there's great wealth, there's great value, there's great reward in so many ways. And the bottom line, it's just such a cooler place to be going against the tide of everyone else. That's never before have we been able to do that. And that's who I found in writing this book. I found a guy who makes $85,000 walking sticks. And you can buy a cane at a medical supply store for $19.95. And this guy's making $80,000 walking sticks.
Andrew, I could just walk across the road and check out
get a bit of wood.
Yeah, a piece of wood, and then I'm good.
and this guy is selling these walking sticks all day long. Who's buying them? Wealthy CEOs of companies who have got elderly parents. And what else do? I buy my dad or my mum this amazing walking stick made from this beautiful timber that is an incredible thing to tell how much I love them for their life. There's nothing else, that I can pay for. You go, wow. So the world also has this amazing desire for people that do things differently. So yeah. So anyway, you didn't want to try and get a word in edgeways when I'm talking at all, did you, Prosper? That's impossible.
Oh, absolutely. This in and of itself is a masterclass in just, how to be the the most expensive, and actually enjoy what it is that you're doing, because your passion and your life story really exemplifies all of this. And while you were talking, I was just thinking to myself, so many people may not see how this actually plays out, because maybe they're not exposing themselves to these expensive sort of brands and actually looking at the difference. The next time you go on a flight, I don't know if you can concur with this, you know, there's usually that first class section where people would have paid thousands of dollars, and there's usually that one last seat at the back where somebody would have paid maybe $85, and
That's right.
they can even go on the same flight standing up, or in, you know, in the bags compartment. They wouldn't care any less. So it's, people value different things, and if you can actually start looking to create for and relate to those that will pay you the most, because I viscerally believe those people that are in the front row would actually pay for the whole flight. The rest of the other seats are just coming in for keeping them company, you know?
Completely. And happy to. I always fly business class. I'm the guy at the front, and I'm very happy to do that for that exact reason. You know, it's like, you know what? Because I value myself. I value what I do, and I'm, you know, to spend a couple of grand instead of 200, to be, and I don't want it to sound arrogant. You know, I haven't always flown, don't worry, at the pointy end, you know, I kind of get that. But I value what I do, and I'm going to spend 3 hours on that flight, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to do some creative stuff that to spend 2 grand on the flight is peanuts, you know, for what I'll create on that flight. But it's a part of my brand. You know, I do business in business class. I get speaking jobs. Everyone I sit next to on a plane, I'm going to give them a copy of my book. You know, there you go. You know, I get emails all the time. Hey, I sat next to you on a plane 3 years ago. Can you come and talk at our conference? You gave me a copy of your book. You know, like I also know how to use books, not just how to write books to build my business.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate this. Now, for those you know, that are maybe wondering, am I the right kind of person to be working with Andrew? What sort of people do you work with, and how can they get started?
Well, I work with people in different ways, Prosper. I mean, of course, you know, like I'm pretty busy. I don't necessarily have a huge amount of space, you know, around, but I do some coaching. So I coach people around this concept as well of starting to, you know, helping people to learn how to charge what they're worth. Um, I teach, and that's a traditional coaching kind of relationship as well. So, you know, that's fairly standard. I teach people how to write books. That's something that I do a lot of, and I love. I've helped 900 people to write their first book. So that's a bit of my brag around. And of course, I teach people how to be speakers as well. So there's a bit of a variety of what it is that I do. And I do that because I like to do the things that I love to do. So I built my business around, you know, teaching people to write books, teaching people to speak, teaching people to charge what they're worth. You know, that's what you can do when you charge what you really are worth, you know, simply instead of doing all the stuff that you don't enjoy. So, you know, the easiest thing, check out my website, andrewgriffiths.com. It's easy, you know, and you know, reach out, connecting, you know, and do that. You know, connect with me. As I said, I always feel a bit like I don't want to be salesy when I'm doing an interview like this, Prosper, as I said to you a while back. If people just want to connect, follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Facebook, get to know me. You know, another thing I'm always going to say is don't leap onto the next guru. You know, like take your time, you know, see what people say in my community. Ask people if you've ever heard of me or work with me, you know, buy one of my books, invest a few bucks and buy a book. It's not a big, to me, books are the cheapest, ridiculous. Books should be $500, $1,000 each, in my view. You know, 30 bucks, whatever it is for something that's going to transform your business. Why wouldn't you do that? You know, like I look at that as my thing. So I'm salesy there because I don't understand why people don't have thousands of books around them all the time for these little pods of knowledge, these little pods of things. If I can't get one thing out of a book that's going to give me 30 bucks in return, it ain't a very good book, right? So yeah, reach out, connect, you know, go from there. Learn about me before you decide to buy from me is my advice, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously believe in life, we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And Andrew, you've obviously lived the life from that boy who was 16, sleeping on people's couches, And obviously the guy who sits in business class and is doing all this work and writing 14 books and soon to be 16 moving forward, and learning. There has been a lot of learning in the way you have been. The first lessons were obviously learning to dive and then learning to turn that around into an actual business. And the last concept, which I adhere to the most, is the contribution part of things, where you are now sending the elevator down and showcasing to other people how they too can be, do, and have a happier existence. And I really, really appreciate the apple seed that you've planted on this show today. I was born to revere people that show you new ways, new books, and new music, because you never know where that is going to lead you. Okay. And the apple seed that you've planted today, we don't know how many apples are going to sprout out of that. I don't know if you've got any last words for our viewers right now, so they can go on their entrepreneurial journeys knowing who you've become, sir.
My advice, it always comes back to that point that I made earlier. It is that every single person on this planet is unique. They've got their own experiences, their own, good things, bad things, learning, knowledge. Learn to embrace what yours are. Learn to really appreciate what makes you Prosper, what makes you Andrew. Identify those things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Doesn't matter, embrace those, and just really just keep those coming to the front, because your uniqueness is where your value lay. It's like there is no value in being the same as everyone else. There is no value in mimicking and copying to be like that. Leave that for AI. Find what makes you unique and just enhance that, embrace it, love it. Even the bad stuff that's not so good, embrace it, and just live life to the beat of your own drum. That's where value comes from, and that's where you will build an extraordinary business. That's where you'll help people, you'll serve people, you'll do extraordinary things.
Wow, fantastic. I sincerely believe that we should just leave it at that, because we don't want to spoil the broth. Now, there you have it, folks. A very captivating journey through the world of entrepreneurship with the incredible Andrew Griffiths, somebody who started off as an orphan to now becoming an icon himself. His story is a true testament to the power of resilience, belief, and unwavering determination. Now, if you're hungry for more game-changing insights and entrepreneurial wisdom, be sure to maybe rewatch this episode again. And while you're at it, share it with someone that you think really needed to hear this message, because sometimes things happen to us, or messages are thrown to us by the universe, or whatever it is that you believe, in ways that we might not expect. I met Andrew at a time when I didn't think I was going to see the lights in my business. And now I can safely say, because of him, I think I'm now one of the most expensive people in my industry. And not only to that, but I'm actually working to being, doing, and having the best service, the best processes, the best outcomes for the people that we work with. And I'm just waiting, for the work of my hands to be explaining that. So on behalf of everybody else that you've helped and everybody else that you are going to help, Andrew, thank you so much for the work you're doing in this world.
Thank you, Prosper. That means a lot to me. I'm driven by that, and thank you. I love hearing your journey and watching your journey. Voyeurism works two directions, my friend. So thank you, Prosper.
Absolutely. Well, it's because of giants like you that we are stepping out into the world and maybe, growing and prospering. But for those that want to connect more with Andrew, I'm going to leave all the details in the show notes there. And remember, in the words of Andrew Griffith himself, do more of what only you can do in the world. Because if you look at my hand, no two fingers on the same hand are of the same height. So what that means is your life matters. Your story matters. There wouldn't have been a Prosper or an Andrew if we didn't go out and create them. Bye for now.